My colleague Marcel Fortin and I are here to give you a little update about sort of what's new with the Map and Data Library at the University of Toronto Libraries. So we're going to focus on collections, and then we'll spend a little bit of time at the end talking about other services that we provide, software licensing, instruction, and things like that. And then we'll talk about where we're going from here. What's the future for us? Okay, so just very quickly, we wanted to thank a couple of our colleagues also at the Map and Data Library, Kara Handren and Kelly Schultz, who provided content for some of the slides that they are the experts on. All right, so what are the things that we do at the Map and Data Library? Lots of things. So the main kind of categories, I think, that cover our work are we build collections of data through licensing and other methods of acquisition. We license software for the use of the U of T community. Some of the software we license is available to everyone to install on your own computers. Other software we license for specific computers in our facilities, which are on the 5th floor of Robarts. And then we provide all kinds of support for people who are using data, help finding data, help collecting your own data, help analyzing your data, help sharing it and figuring out what to do with things that you've collected over the course of your research. And we do that one-on-one, and we also run all kinds of workshops and custom training sessions and things like that. And then we have, I kind of mentioned this, we have computing spaces on the 5th floor. There's a lab, computer lab that's open to anyone to use when Robarts is open. And then we have a reference area that has somewhat more limited hours, but that's kind of the place where we provide our one-on-one support. In terms of our collections, we try to cover all aspects of data, which is really broad. So we have somewhat more traditional numeric data for supporting quantitative statistical analysis. We have individual level microdata collections and then statistics. And we have a very large collection of geospatial data. And then more recently, we're starting to get into textual data and qualitative types of data, supporting qualitative research methods as well. And then we also have sort of our passion projects in the Map and Data Library, where we undertake initiatives to create new data sets out of our historical collections in different ways. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our statistics and microdata, and then their text and data mining collections, and then I'll turn it over to Marcel to talk about geospatial data, and then like the other services and where we're going from here. So the statistics and microdata collection has lots of things in it, but kind of the sort of biggest areas in the collection are social science survey data, public opinion polls, and then business and economic databases. We're working on a project to migrate our cataloging about the data collections into Borealis, which is also known as Dataverse. So we're going to have like a new catalog for finding that stuff. In general, you don't use library search, the U of T library catalog, to find the Map and Data Library data collections. You generally work from the Map and Data Library homepage, and then we try to point you to the right places to find things. And then in the microdata realm, we also have a Ontario-wide data portal called Odyssey, which is really good to know about. And that's how you find some of the collections as well. In terms of what is new in this area, in the last year or two, we've acquired a few new collections. So one of them is polling data from Gallup Inc. That covers the world poll, which is international surveys that are conducted. The collection goes back to 2005. And then there's US only, which is the Gallup Poll Social Series, which is various themes that they do on a monthly rolling basis. And then they have been doing a COVID survey since 2020 as well. So we have access to a web-based platform called Gallup Analytics, which provides you with just the results of those polls, but you can also get the individual level respondent data through our subscription to Gallup's collection. So that's available through our Borealis catalog. So I just put a few screenshots on there of some random examples of the kinds of topics you can investigate using this data source. So the COVID survey has all kinds of questions, but I pulled out one about how confident people are in vaccines and how that's changed over the last couple of years. And then the second graph is from the Gallup Poll Social Series, and it's the environment theme. And it was asking them about how worried they are about climate change based on whether they live in urban or rural environments. And there's all kinds of questions you could pursue in these data. So we licensed the Gallup stuff back in 2021, and then in early 2022, we got a new data product from Data Axle, which is a database of historical records of businesses that existed in any given year. And there covers the US and Canada. And for each year in the US database, there's between 11 and 15 million businesses included, and in Canada, between 1.5 and 2.5 million records per year. So it includes the location, number of employees, sales volume, industry that they're in, and various other things as well. And then the other kind of like probably the biggest used collection that we support users for is Statistics Canada's public use microdata files. So this is not a licensed collection in the sense that Statistics Canada releases those files to any member of the public can access them. But the library does have an agreement with Statistics Canada, a long-standing one, which provides some better file formats and better metadata for these collections. And it allows us to put all of those collections into that Odyssey portal that I mentioned a minute ago. So everything is gathered together there. And some of the recent releases from StatCan are the survey on healthcare workers' experiences during the pandemic, which was conducted in 2021. And for these COVID surveys they released the public use microdata quite quickly. So it came out this year. And then also the Canadian Internet Use Survey, conducted in 2020, released in 2022, and the Canadian Tobacco and Nicotine Survey 2021, which came out this year as well.
And they're only recently public, right?
What's
Before
that?
They were not.
Yeah, so Statistics Canada's data distribution model has been evolving a lot in the last decade or so, and they started out by making their statistical tables more and more publicly accessible and free, and then they moved to microdata in the last 5 years or so. So we used to have to, like the agreement that we had with Statistics Canada used to pay for us to have access to these, and it was only available to the university community. So that's changed now. But we still do a lot of work on the files that we get in Odyssey for the university community that makes them better and easier to search and all that. In the statistics realm, after the 2020 US election, we bought some fairly detailed election data from a product called the Dave Leap Election Atlas. And we have up to precinct level data for the 2020 presidential election. And I'm hoping to get some data for the midterm election that just happened as well. Though there are various publicly available and subscription-based products that you can get for US election data, but his tend to come out quite quickly, so we tend to pay the subscription fee to access them because we can get them quite quickly after the elections happen. And then we also subscribed this year to a product called IndiaStat, which gives you a compilation of all kinds of different sources of statistics about India from governments and international organizations and other bodies as well. And then in progress right now, I'm working on trying to acquire a financial database on a new platform that we have not had access to on before. So the vendor is Refinitiv, and it's financial and economic statistics. And we have access to it right now through a platform that is a little bit unwieldy for people to use in some cases. So we're trying to get access to it on Wharton Research Data Services, or WORDS, which is a very popular distribution platform for financial data. And we have various other products on there already. So that's a license that we're working on right now. And what we're hoping to get along with it is ESG data, which is very popular right now, extremely popular right now. Different companies do their own. So you buy it from different vendors, you get slightly different things, but they create scores that indicate companies' performance on whatever factors that they have set up in relation to environmental, social, and governance factors, so how they're performing in those areas. So I don't know how long that's going to take, because data licensing can take a very long time. But eventually, hopefully, we'll have this on WORDS. So that's the statistics and microdata collection. Sort of another area that has really been emerging in the last few years is supporting folks doing text and data mining on large collections of text of various kinds. So if you were at the talk that I gave around this time last year for the Toronto Data Workshop, I talked in more detail about this than I have time for today. But the library's collection, traditional collections of books, journals, newspapers, and so on in the digital realm now means that we have this huge quantities of text that is available potentially for people to actually analyze. But most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, we don't have necessarily the rights to just like take that entire big collection and like give it to people. So a lot of the times what happens is the vendors produce a platform that allows you to query the collection, make a results set, and run some different analyses or statistics on it in that environment so that they can kind of control how use is done. So I'm going to give you a few examples. We have quite a few of these platforms now, so this is not everything, but I'll give you a couple of examples of like different ways that this is managed in the library and collections that you have available to you potentially. So one of them is the Gale Digital Scholar Lab. So this is kind of one end of the spectrum. This provides access to digitized text from the Gale Historical Collection. So it's a really good sort of historical analysis, digital humanities kind of a tool. And you do everything inside their web platform. It has visualization tools and statistical analyses. So there's sentiment analysis, cluster analysis, things like that. I've got a few screenshots on the slide. And there's not necessarily any coding required to do this. It's all from their point and click menus. Another one that we have now is ProQuest TDM Studio. This one has a very important, useful content in that it's thousands of different ProQuest databases, and included in that is ProQuest dissertations and theses, and also the New York Times, which a lot of people really want to be able to analyze. And this has sort of two pieces to it. One is a web application that's point and click that lets you make visualizations on a somewhat small subset of like a set that you can create. And then the other option is to go into this workbench, which lets you do coding with R or Python in Jupyter Notebook environment with larger sets of the collection. And then the third one I wanted to highlight is our collection of Web of Science raw data. So this is a slightly anomalous example in that we have managed to license a local load of this entire content set, which is, it's huge. It goes back to, 1900, and it's millions and millions of records. And it was very, very expensive. And the challenge that we have is having licensed this important and very expensive collection, how do we let people actually use it? Because it's huge. And it consists of, it's metadata describing all of the articles in XML format. So the Map and Data Library undertook a collaboration with SciNet. And what we've done is brought that XML metadata into a PostgreSQL database on their environment, which you can then query using SQL statements using R or Python after having gotten access to the SciNet environment. So we have a whole bunch of instructions on our website for how to do all of that. And it's really exciting for us to have made that partnership with SciNet, because now we're going to be working on bringing other collections into it. There's a patent data collection that I don't really know a lot of details about, so I can tell you in detail, but maybe Marcel could. We're working right now on getting that into that environment as well, and I think that will just build from there. So it's really exciting.
The one thing to add about that is also it contains the citation information as well to all the articles that are in there.
So it's like got the citations that are each of the articles have like the reference list basically. So you can like connect things with that. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's it for me, and I'll turn it over to Marcel for a bit.
So I'll be talking first about the geospatial data collections, and then a little bit more about some of the services that Leanne talked a little bit about, and as she said, the future. And I guess I'm the one that Rohan was referring to when he said thousands of years, as you can tell from my gray beard. But an overall view of the geospatial data collection, it's the not thousands of years, but we started in about 1988 to create these collections of geospatial data. The actual microdata and statistical collections really started in the 70s, but really when the data librarian Lionel Roos from UBC moved from UBC to U of T, started also geospatial data collections as well. So that's a large collection that we hold locally, but also in a shared portal with the rest of the Ontario University libraries as well, in what's called the Geo portal. You can see there's about 160 terabytes of data and about 1,400 titles total that are available to the community. Some of those are open data sets as well. Sort of a general overview of what we try and collect are, just like our previous map collection, we bought things for the entire world. But the closer you get to Toronto, the bigger the collections are. So things like aerial photos and ortho photos as well, they tend to be more Toronto than Ontario, than Canada, than the world. Same for planimetric data that holds things like building outlines, building heights, those kinds of things. But I do have an example there of building heights and building outlines for Mumbai, for instance. So lots of topographic data as well. The same thing again, lots for Toronto, a bit more outside of for Ontario and so on. Some of the long-standing collections that we've had that that are pan-Canadian, for instance, are the DMTI data sets of things like roads, postal codes, addresses, topographic data, hydrographic data as well, really high resolution. Not always the most reliable for things like, let's say, land use, but they're pan-Canadian, so they can actually be extremely useful in that sense. Property and building data I mentioned earlier. TerraNet dataset is one of the datasets that's used the most. Our property data maps for Toronto also used tremendously over the years. One tool that we don't really use we don't support that much, but is really an important data set or data sets, is in a web platform called Simply Analytics that actually has all of North America business data. Some of it you look at it geographically, but you can actually export the data without even thinking about mapping it out or anything like that. There are lots of great tools or data sets within Simply Analytics. We have only, I think, 20 seats per time, so we don't really promote it as a teaching tool because it's hard to actually teach with it with so few seats. But it's a great product. Some of the new material that I've collected in the last little while, or I should say that we've collected, because Leanne is now our licensing expert within the department. It's not an easy thing, so we've actually got a point person to actually help us out with these things. So these are some of the latest census data sets that we've just purchased. Some of these look a little bit old, but they're actually, in some cases, the most recent censuses for these countries. So, but some of them are older, though, of course. But I thought it was a really good idea to start thinking about not just looking at the Canadian census, but looking at other censuses. We've always had China census data and India census data. But these are really well packaged. They're in English as well as the original language, so really extremely, hopefully useful to a lot of people. They come, all of them, at various geographies. So here's an example of Japan at the various levels of geography that the data are available at. And it's not just the actual boundaries that we're talking about here. We're talking about lots and lots of variables that are available with the actual boundary files as well. Included is a lot of documentation, including the sample census forms that came with that were used for the census. Lots and lots of documentation on what each and every variable, the hundreds and hundreds of variables that are available to you at different levels. That's all documented. And again, everything is in the original language and in English as well. In terms of topographic data, these are some of the countries that I've recently purchased in the last couple of years as well. Some of these are a little bit older as well. Very, very difficult to obtain this kind of material. It's even hard to obtain the paper versions of these that originated the digital formats. So some of these I tried to actually get the topographic data in paper, and it was too difficult to do. This was, of course, a long time ago. So it's amazing to be able to now create this data set, or this collection of data set, by buying the digital ones, and then can create whatever people want, or they can create themselves using these data sets. An example here is the Ukrainian data. Total of 29 topographic data layers that includes things like railroads, vegetation, hydrography, the different regional boundaries, and so on. And again, the documentation in this case is in English and Russian, and in some cases Ukrainian as well, but not everything is in Ukrainian from what I can tell. So I think very telling of where these data sets are coming from as well, probably originating in Russia. They were bought from a company called Eastview in the United States. Some of the other data sets that I've recently purchased include traffic counts for all of Canada. I bought them in 2020, and I've just purchased the 2022 as well. So a comparison would be really interesting in terms of pandemic, pre-pandemic, and or just pre-pandemic, and then looking at during the pandemic, and now looking at not post-pandemic, but certainly more open world that we have here in Canada. Nighttime light in Toronto, something that I didn't really know existed until the city actually sent it to me, which was really shocking that they would provide me with a data set. We've got a very good relationship with the city's GIS unit, but it's the licensing, again, is always one of the difficult things. I just again, on the free side, all of a sudden we were given this ArcGIS Street Map Premium that is a very expensive data set. We got it for free. And it allows you to geocode and do routing without using the online or the cloud version, which can do the same thing, but this allows you to do millions and millions of geocodes without worrying about our points and shutting down the system, which has happened a few times with ArcGIS Online. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I just got it last week. Yeah.
I'm not totally.
No. Planet.com is a really exciting collection of daily historical high-resolution multispectral satellite imagery for use by anyone on campus. It's really an exciting and with potential for being more exciting if we knew more. That's one of the things that I would say about supporting this kind of thing, is there was demand for it, but we don't really necessarily have the expertise to truly support it at all levels. You can do a lot more than just look at the image, right? You can actually do a lot of analyses, and it's something that I'd love to get into a little bit more. Certainly data science, all those millions and millions of pixels that you can actually go in and dig into would be incredible to see data scientists use it. One of the fun data sets that I've been trying to acquire for the last little while. This one isn't a licensing issue. It's a payment issue. U of T paying only by check. They don't accept check. So I may have to use my own credit card for this one a couple of times, max out the limit. No, it's not terribly expensive. And they have an academic license, but that's what broke down right before the pandemic. I was just about to buy it. I was not able to. So hockey, baseball, basketball. I didn't think of football, but I might think about football as well in this. As Leanne mentioned as well, there are a lot of projects that we work on as well that we feel there's a need there. Or sometimes it's something that we are engaged in ourselves. But this is a particular need that has happened in the city of Toronto for a long time, and university students have wanted land use for the city of Toronto, and you can get land use for all sorts of places in the world, but you cannot get it in data format, in usable format for the city of Toronto. It's something that they just simply do not allow. And so you can try and export the PDFs that they have, but as soon as you do, the resolution really fails and you can't do much with it. And this is land use that's available in PDF at the parcel level in the city. So using new modules within ArcGIS Pro, I was able to actually train a model to really fill in those pixels, and it's actually not to redo the pixels, it's to train it to look at a range of pixels and say, you know what, that's this type of land use, this is the color really, but then you assign that land use to that particular color. So this was at the parcel level, so that then allows you to do things like aggregate it up to this different census levels. So this is at the census block level, for instance, and then you could easily aggregate it up to census tract and so on. Other data sets, historical data sets, you know, that I really love working on our Toronto projects, like the, you know, historical rivers, historical breweries, building construction dates, and so on. All things that we make freely available to the world. We don't keep it to just UT. Right now they're in Borealis, but hoping to bring them into our GeoPortal as well. Multiple access points is what I try to do with these types of data sets. Now, Leanne obtained a SHRC grant a few years ago, partnership development grant, to actually create an inventory of all historical Canadian census data and all the supporting documentation, and really hoping for, I'm assuming, more funding for building an actual discovery portal. But I think there's still room to be able to build the portal, right?
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. We're working on doing like a proof of concept, like a small scale prototype during this grant, and then hopefully apply for some more funding. It's a really important project when you consider the US National Historical GIS website, where they do have all the census data, well, most of it, I think, anyway, in one place, or ways to get to it. In Canada, there's just nothing like that, and you can't just go to the National Archives and decide, I want this historical census data. It doesn't work that way in Canada. Well, can I just say, I mean, this is an area where I'd be interested to connect with anybody in this community that knows things about it. But what I want to do in like a future phase of the project is to figure out how to get the tabular data out of the historical scan publications. So they're scanned and they're OCR, maybe not in the best job of OCR that could have been done, but like what are the best ways to, like, in an automated fashion, get all those tables out of those documents. So that's something that I'm going to be trying to work on, but I don't have the technical skills to do it myself, that's for sure. We also talked a little bit about that. Maybe I'll go over this quickly, but we support the Esri site license. We pay for it in the library. Everybody at U of T has access to ArcGIS Online and all the desktop software as well. NVivo site license that has been extremely popular. Leanne has worked very hard at the second license that we've had here. Very, very time consuming, and we wonder sometimes why we do it, but there's so much demand, so much demand for NVivo. We get a lot of requests for NVivo. And then some of the software that's in our lab that's not something that we purchase for the entire campus, but we do provide access to in our lab, and we're giving access to a lot of people remotely during the pandemic. And that's one of the things that we're also thinking about, well, we're working on actually, is being able to have our lab in person, but also working on remote access to this software. We've noticed that people just don't want to install the software on their computers, or they're using Macs. Even with NVivo, there's a Mac version, but it's not the exact same either, and it doesn't work as well. So that's one of the things that that we're working on. And so these are the software that we also support, all this list of commercial software that we support, but we also support a lot of open source software. So for instance, I'm doing a QGIS workshop on Monday, for instance. There's probably more to the list here than what I've got in this list here. We may have forgotten some, but basically anything that's to do with data that's available, we support or will eventually try to support. Our instruction as well, we cover all those different pieces of software that you saw. We do one-on-one support. We do classes as well for different departments that want us to do these workshops or tutorials. And then we also have a lot of the tutorials online, and we do a lot of recordings, and some of the classes, some of the workshops are actually in Quarkus as well, so that you can actually register for it and go through the different workshop in Quarkus itself.
So in terms of the future, we buy these collections sometimes because we have money, but we'd love to hear what people want to purchase, with the caveat that, of course, the licensing, again, is a difficult one. It's not that we can't do it, it just takes a long time sometimes. Money is not as much of an issue anymore. Obviously, there's open data, but sometimes some of these open data as well are not terribly useful. For instance, all these censuses, if you want, we're trying to try and get all those different censuses from the individual countries that might have them. It's a lot of work to actually put this all together. So we actually sometimes buy that kind of material already packaged. We're also renovating when we're not entirely sure, but that's definitely going to happen. The 5th floor is going to become something else. The government publications are moving, the maps, some of the maps are moving, hopefully not all of them. And we're rebuilding. And so we're hoping to have a new name with that as well, because we've heard that the word map isn't so sexy anymore in their title. To me, it's just fine, but whatever. So Leanne mentioned putting a lot of the microdata in Dataverse, in Borealis. I'm moving the geospatial data because you can't, you can put it in Borealis, but really it deserves more of a geospatial search to it as well. So right now I'm loading just the metadata for the GIS collections slowly into the GeoPortal, and eventually with the new GeoPortal that's coming in a couple of years, there has been money put towards revamping the GeoPortal. So we'll eventually put, hopefully, the data as well as the metadata into the GeoPortal. We're hoping for something called a collection diversity audit, something that libraries are doing quite a bit, but it's not something that's done to data. And we'd like, Leanne has led this idea, and we're hoping to eventually do that. Kara Handren and Kelly Schultz are leading a conference that we're holding here at Robarts in May of 2023 on text and data mining in libraries. And one of the things that came to me just yesterday, that I'd had a discussion with some faculty who were leading the Jupyter Hub on campus, and they'd wanted to load some of our data sets in Jupyter Hub. And it's something that's sort of fallen through, but it's something that I'd really love to see as well, is somehow linking either the two or loading some of those data sets into Jupyter Hub as well. And that's it. So, I'm just going to did I miss anything?